during this first half of the 20th century, we have a series of developmentalist and industrializing policies brought about which brought about a need for a new workforce, right? One that that should have technical training, and also, and in order to assemble this workforce, from like the mid-19th century onwards, the Brazilian state developed an official policy to facilitate the migration of white Europeans as an official. And again, let's think about, the racial hierarchy of coloniality, and also thinking about how the modern nation state, the so-called independent nation state of Brazil, is still a colonial construct. So this policy was made to whiten the country, to facilitate the migration of white Europeans, to whiten the country. Again, an enactment of colonial policies and colonial racial hierarchies.
Was this explicit? This was explicit to whiten the country?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very clearly. So although a number of training initiatives meant to supply the skills for this new workforce, these initiatives have been established throughout the country since the mid-19th century. The establishment of design education a century later then was seen by governmental institutions as a path towards Western notions of development and modernization, as a way of birthing this modern country, and pushing Brazil towards this ideal. So it is then during this time that the canonical design discourse in the country was established, including this first design school established. I mean, arguably, because there is some questions whether it was the first or not, I have to say that. There's kind of disagreements about that, but I think it is, regardless, it is very relevant to think about the school, which was established in Rio, a school called Escola Superior de Desenho Industrial. It was founded in 1963, so 1 year before the dictatorship, before the coup that established the dictatorship, that established the military dictatorship. So the school's curriculum was developed during the 1950s, and it was based, and this is super interesting, on the model of the Hochschule für Gestaltung of Ulm. So it was based on a European model, on this model of a German design school that is kind of a bastion of mid-century German functionalism, which which emerged in the aftermath of the Second World War. And in many ways, it sought to kind of review the Bauhaus ideals, and through the perspective of the industrial society of the post-war. So influenced by this school, ESG, which is which is the acronym for the school in Brazil, ESG's curriculum maintained a technology and production-oriented approach to design education, in a very sharp contrast to the more humanist methods common in many higher education institutions in Brazil. So design was then promoted in a concerted effort as this tool for Brazilian export products, according to Washington Lessa, design scholar from Brazil. So in many ways, design education remained until kind of the late 1970s, disassociated from even the insurgent anti-dictatorship movements that were being articulated within public universities, public institutions, of which ESG was part of. The project for ESG was only actually even made possible through an alliance between the then governor of Guanabara State, which today would be Rio de Janeiro State, Carlos Lacerda, and Rio's Museum of Modern Art. And Carlos Lacerda was a very well-known conservative figures. So that is also a very significant alliance, right? A very significant historical background for the establishment of this design school. And Lacerda's support for the school was largely due to his party's fear, his party as in, the only allowed party, the fear of appearing uncommitted to this industrialist and developmentalist project for the country, which was a popular position with the most powerful sectors of Brazilian society, which of course were fundamental for the maintenance and sedimentation of the political power of the military regime. So I don't know how much have I spoken because I could just like continue.
You're making a really interesting point of how, without saying it and using air quotes, which, if you knew my daughter, she would love it. She loves air quotes as well. It's interesting that this educational institution is happening at the same time as this dictatorship forming, and that actually when you look at the interpersonal relationships, they're sort of intertwined with each other, and perhaps even this idea of development very explicitly matching so well with the idea of colonization. So that's why I was asking for clarification on this whitening of the population, because that's very explicitly this ideal of colonization, and then going in with designers. I don't know if a lot of if the people listening, perhaps, or you, Luiza, or Michael, if you've ever watched any of this SpaceX stuff, Elon Musk, so this like future-oriented colonization, right? We're using the same language. So this idea of going to this planet, colonizing it, and developing it, this idea that we are actually, these blueprints, we're not bothering to change them. We're just doing the same thing, and then the next. So we could probably, just as in Brazil, they brought in the design institution at pretty much the same time as the dictatorship for the development, the industrialization, the progress of this land. You could imagine similar things happening in Mars. Just so that we don't feel like this is something of the past, right? That you really, some of our imagination of the future is actually based on these blueprints that you're describing, Louise.